everyone. This is Tae-Soo Kim from Georgia Tech. In fact, this tutorial will be given by three people, including myself. This is Zhiqiang Lin from UT Dallas, and this is Chai Chai from UC Berkeley and Stony Brook. This tutorial consists of three parts. The very first part about SGX 101 will be given by Zhiqiang Lin for about 1 hour, half hour. The second part is about most popular approach in SGX, namely about library operating system, which will be given by Chai Che for the as the second part. And lastly, I will be talking about security issues on SGX. So hopefully, Jicheng will cover about the basics about SGX 101.
All right, good morning. So in the first part of our tutorial, I will give you guys basic idea on what is SGX and what are those applications you can build with SGX. So this is outline of my portion. So I will, like I said, I will mostly emphasize on the SGX 101 and then how to use SGX to build your applications. Regarding the security of SGX, that will be given by Tae-Soo. So right now, just believe SGX is secure and then how we use it. So we academics tend to ask why. So that's why I would like to first talk about why SGX. So let's use the example of how we build the defense against malware to see the evolution and then to see why SGX can help here. So we know early days you have malware and malware attack your computer system, and usually they at that moment they are the user space, and then you build your defense there. The user space, there is no isolation. You know the malware will attack your defense. Then, if you say let's build isolation, then let's push our malware defense into the operating system kernel, and then cybersecurity is a game, and you play with adversary. Adversary is also smart. They will try to attack the OS kernel and then to disable your antivirus. So in later days, of course, the entire computer system is not trusted. And later, there's virtualization gets introduced into our commercial processor. And with virtualization, we know we can build defense, such as use virtual machine introspection to monitor the operating system, to monitor your program. But virtualization still are software components, and the malware can also get into your hypervisor and then make your entire computer stack untrusted. And then this arms race can keep going. And so what we should do there? Recently Intel introduced this SGX, that is a trusted hardware component, and this trusted hardware, you can see here, they can build a sandbox to protect your application. With SGX, you can see the attack surface that really gets minimized. So attacker either have to attack your hardware or attack your just application. Previously we tend to build software-based solution. Software-based solution, software can be easily tampered, modified. So with hardware, at least if hardware cannot be tampered, we tend to believe that definitely offer a strong security guarantee. So SGX is really a hardware using hardware assured security to build defense. Actually, in history, there are a line of research of building hardware-based security. For instance, early days, there are secure co-processors, secure processor, or trust platform module, TPM, trust zone, AMD SVM, and Intel TXT. So there are a line of work there. But SGX is really the one that is cheap, that is really widely available. So what is the SGX? SGX is the one that provides hardware assured security with minimized attack surface. It is practical because today you can purchase the laptop, desktop, or servers with SGX enabled protection. So SGX is our practical trusted execution environment implemented by Intel and extending x86, the instruction set architecture, and it offers native performance. So I will show you later how the performance looks like, and it's actually compatible to our prior, comparable to x86, and like I said, it's cheap. It's widely available, and today you can easily go to the market to purchase your computers with SGX processors. So what are those important security primitives SGX offers? SGX offers two basic security primitives. One is isolated execution. So remember I showed you earlier, if we want to build security, we tend to use isolation, but prior approach use software-based isolation that oftentimes can be easily broken by attackers. But SGX, they offer a strong isolation guaranteed by hardware. And the second primitive is the remote attestation. With isolated execution, we can achieve confidentiality and integrity. With remote attestation, we can achieve integrity. So let's zoom in a little bit to see how this isolated execution work. The first primitive, isolated execution. So you can see here, we know isolated execution offer you the confidentiality and integrity. So to really do that, you definitely have to use crypto, right? You use crypto to encrypt your code, your data. So with that, you can see in the physical memory, there's a region we call EPC. In this memory region, their data and code gets encrypted. So if your operating system, you cannot malware, you cannot read the content of this memory region. And this memory region is mapped, of course, the enclave. And then inside the CPU, you can see the code and data. It's decrypted. Inside the CPU, it's plain text, and of course includes register and cache. Then outside CPU package, then if the data belongs to the enclave, they are encrypted. So then prior attack, we talk about like if you want to do attacks from the operating system or from the hypervisor, if attack you cannot read the content because it's encrypted. Or if you have a malicious enclave or something you want to access between the enclaves, you cannot do that. And if you say you want to do some memory bus based attacks like snooping the bus, and you also cannot see the content because it uses crypto to protect that. So this really build your protected region, and in that region, malware cannot read the content. And that's why you offer. They give you the confidentiality and integrity protection. And remote attestation is the second primitive SGX offers. The remote attestation gives the developers or service provider the opportunity to verify the code you are running in the computer system is really the code you developed. So basically, it establishes authenticating the channel with your application, and also talks to the attestation service provided by Intel to verify the code you're running in the remote enclave is really the one you provided. So that's providing you the confidence that the code is not tampered. So those are the two primitives. One is isolation, the other is remote attestation. Then what are those killer applications, right? So we have this SGX, so what are those use cases? Definitely SGX is a perfect platform for you to build your secure remote execution. So so here, two keywords, remote and secure. So if you say I'm just local and there's no communication with outside, maybe you don't have to use SGX. Then let's say here, what are those computing paradigm that require remote execution? Of course, we know typically there are in our internet space there are like client-server architecture. You have your local machine and you have some server machine, and in this case, there are remote execution. Either you execute your code in the server, or servers put some code to the client execute. So let's say how the typical use case with this. If I'm end user, I'm just I want to run some secure service remotely, say cloud. I outsource my code to the cloud, and then how I gain the guarantee. So you can use SGX definitely. Um, so you can use SGX to say, hey, can we do secrecy preserving data analytics, or you process your healthcare record or things like that, right? If user or corporate user, you have some secrets, and when you outsource to the cloud, and you could use SGX to give you the confidentiality and integrity protection. So what about if I'm a server? I'm a server, say I'm computer game publisher, and I know when I distribute my game go to client computer, and we know client there may be malicious guy. Those people could break my computer games. So can I leverage SGX to protect my code? That's possible, right? Because SGX give you those secure remote execution. Then what about Netflix, the media stream players, right? Providers, they offer media stream, and we know there are attacks to steal movies, right? Then how can we prevent them to steal the movies? And of course, the DIM, right? You say, hey, I'm software vendors. I know there's arms race there to reverse engineering software and software piracy, right? So these people can also, of course, can benefit from SGX, right? Okay, so that is brief summary about why. So why SGX? So next, I just want to briefly talk about some internals of SGX, such as the instructions, data structures, and how to develop SGX software, and what's the performance of the SGX. So from programmer's perspective, so what is SGX? Oh, SGX just offers you a set of instructions. So here's the commercial processor that is widely available today, Skylake processor, and it has the version 1 of the SGX. So from programmer perspective, like I'm a system programmer or assembly programmer, so SGX give you two instructions, the enclave U and enclave S. U stands for user space, S is system space. Here actually, for SGX version 1, there were like 18 instructions, and SGX version 2, there are 24 instructions. So you can see, hey, there are two instructions, how you can achieve like 20 instructions, right? So remember, in earlier in x86, you can use register EX to tell the system, like for example, in the system code case, you provide different system code number. The operating system and the computer knows which system code you're executing. So with SGX, you provide different the SGX calls leaf function. You provide different register value to this register EX, then the system knows which SGX instruction you are executing. For instance, so here are those detailed instructions, and we list all of them in this table. So you have those user level, system level instructions such as add. So basically, it's the add up and EPC page. So here, like again, I showed you earlier that if you look at disassembly code, you can only see instruction like enclave U. This is a user level instruction, and so for this one, you can see if you move 0x4 to IX and then execute this one, that's corresponding to the exit instruction. So here you can see there are a bunch of those instructions there. So basically, you just provide different value to the register IX, then the CPU knows which instruction you are executing. So there are, again, you can see those are P is the system level instruction, U is the user space instructions. These are specified in the Intel manual. Application programmers, you tend to don't. Application programmers tend to, they don't use these instructions because system programmers just build the library for them. They just call some API. They use them. If you really want to write assembly code, you may want to use some of those user space instructions. And what are those data structures, right? Here, just show you from the Intel manual. Those are the data structures provided by the hardware. certainly you have to follow their format to read their data structures. So I'm not going to dive into detail of each of those because that requires maybe 1 hour. So here, just at a high level, you understand there are a set of instructions and corresponding data structures gets involved. Think about in x86 platforms there are data structures such as your page tables, right? These are hardware defined. Then from runtime perspective, so how the SGX program executed. Here I show you here I show you a diagram that show you in the runtime how your trusted code and untrusted code interact. So here you can see this green box, they are trusted. They are running inside enclave. From operating system perspective, this is just ciphertext. It's just encrypted, and you cannot modify. If you modify integrity, they can easily detect the integrity gets violated. And this region is stored in the hardware, special hardware called called processor reserved memory, and they use a memory encryption engine to encrypt this memory. Of course, when the content in this memory loaded to the CPU, the MEE engine will automatically decrypt them. Then inside your enclave, inside your trust, the code inside this enclave, if you want to if you want to say do some I/O, then you have to go out because enclaves run inside the user space. In user space, if you want to have some input, you have to go out. So in that case, you have to call OCall and go to the untrusted code. So SGX rely on the operating system to provide this I/O. When your OCall finishes, you can go back to your enclave by calling by doing the eCall. So the eCall and OCall. So this basically to show you the memory layout and how they execute. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Then let's say, hey, you have those instructions. Then how we use it? Oh yes. Processor reserved memory is just our special region that is it's the hardware. You consider it's a special region that is protected by some memory encryption engine. EPC. Okay. PIM I think requires in the BIOS you specify the process reserved memory, and then EPC is really EPC is really the one that has encrypted the encrypted leverage hardware encryption to protect them. EPC, yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Register shadowed. It's not shadowed. It's just typical register, because they are compatible to native code. You're right. Okay. Then let's say, hey, how we develop the program application use SGX. There are two ways. So far, there are two ways of having your software protected by SGX. The first approach is let's use those instructions provided. Let's write programs from scratch. So in this way, we just talk about you have to if you want the SGX protection, you need the trusted region, and you need the trusted code and untrusted code. So you have the partition software, put your secrecy or inside the trusted component, and then you so basically first of all you just partition your software, which part you think you have to protect, which part you think you don't have to protect, and then use software development tools such as Intel SDK, and use that to develop your software. And in particular, basically you have to define your enclave. Enclave just executes your trusted component, and then you use the tool to generate this equals and equals and link with SGX library. This is if you use Intel SGX SDK, you tend to use this approach, and then of course you build and debug. So this is the first approach. Of course, first approach that means we have to redevelop our software. Then what about our legacy code, right? And also to redevelop software. Of course, we need the source code, right? And then we have to partition the software into trusted components and untrusted components. This is tedious. That's why recently, okay, yeah. Then here, you know, to use the SGX, Intel wish you to do this way, to redevelop your software and build it. Because later when we talk about if you use the other approach, you have side channel. In this case, you are the program developer, you know your software, and you should be the side channel. You should be aware of those side channel, and you can eliminate those side channel. So this is Intel, when Intel provides this, the wish programmer just go this approach. Okay, so I talk about if you do software partition, it's tedious, and you require programmer efforts to identify which component is trusted, which is untrusted. That's why recently there's a work in this year's Unix ATC. They provide an approach to perform the automatic application partitioning. So basically, their idea is they take application source code, require some code annotation. You do some code annotation, and then they can generate those enclave code for you. So this is at a very high level. I think maybe some guys in the back cannot see it clearly. So they do some program analysis and identify which ask a user to annotate the code, and then partition the software automatically and build the untrusted code and trusted code. So this is the first approach of using SGX. You just develop your software from scratch. Or if you have source code, maybe you could use this approach to help you to have your SGX software. And the second approach is, all right, how about legacy, right? So can we just forget about partition? Let's don't do any partition. Let's just put the entire code, whatever app we have, and run inside SGX. So that's the second approach. So you don't do any partitioning. Then in this way, your legacy code can still be protected, right? So the idea is we know SGX runs user space, and if there is some system level access, say you want to ask some I/O, you have to go out, right? So if we can if there's some library OS there, then if we can link with library OS, then we don't have to we can just the application can be executed inside the enclave. So there are several efforts in this direction by using library OS approach. The earlier efforts include like Haven and recently the Graphene SGX. So here just show you a diagram about the Haven. So you can see the unmodified binary, that is legacy Windows native binary, and they can be executed inside the enclave. So the orange region is the enclave, and then they use the drawbridge, that is Microsoft library OS. So you can see you can use this to protect your application. But when you use this approach, you encounter another challenge, especially those side channel, right? Because in this case, I know the binary code, I have the copy, I know the instruction mapping, I know, for instance, your page fault. So that's that's caused a lot of security issues there. I think Tetsu later will talk about that. Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't follow this part. Could you please go back to the last slide and explain bullet number 2? What do you mean by if SGX apps are executed within the OS, then the problem gets solved? Which problem gets solved?
So I mean the code execution, basically we talk about you have to go out, right? Application have to go out to ask for system call service. If it's
Application running in enclave, occasionally have to go out and make system call, right?
right, right. If the system call gets deprivileged, go to user space, then you don't have to go out. So then your entire application can run inside the enclave.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, you bring all your application code into enclave.
Yes, includes some operating system service.
So there are no
Right. There is really some kind of OCO that your library OS can provide. Library OS can handle that. So basically, this approach just enable your legacy. So system people still have to do something like their library OS. They still have to do some OCO. Yeah.
But a challenge in this approach then is enclave. In my understanding, the memory size for enclave is limited. Right?
Yes.
Not all kind of application is not possible to do all kind of application using this.
Then you have to swap memory. Right? Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay. Of course, recently the graphing SGX. I think Chats will talk more detail about this approach. And then we have the two ways, right? We use partitioning and no partitioning. And if you here's a simple comparison. So what about the trusted computing base? Of course, if you do partitioning, you know I'm a developer. I know what are my trusted code. So the TCP could be smaller. If you use library OS, you know your system service gets wrapped to enclave, then definitely your TCP becomes larger. And of course, you see you have to require programmer effort to develop the software. And of course, if you use library OS, this type of approach, no partitioning, you can use legacy, right? So, so this is just very high level. You have a comparison. Then what's performance? Is the SGX really bad, or how much overhead is that, right? And that's always the question. The first time when I say this, how slow it is. Right? So here, this is basically I talk about how SGX program execute. You can see at the runtime, right? At the runtime, what is the overhead? Actually, inside the enclave, if you say inside CPU, that's relative because there's no encryption. Register and cache, they're all decrypted. So inside CPU, if you think you have a set of instructions, then you can just run inside CPU. That is native. There's no overhead. So at runtime, see the overhead really come from if you perform those equal and OCO, because you have I/O, you go out and then you ask system service, and you also when you go out, you have to decrypt, right? Because outside they don't know the internet content. So that's really where the overhead come from. So equal and OCO, and also the cache, of course. From the main memory to the cache, you have the memory encryption engine have to decrypt and encrypt. So that's also some overhead there. So that's why I said the runtime overhead really come from equal and OCO, and also the enclave cache and the memory encryption. So, and of course, say, hey, I'm running the SGX in the beginning of enclave. I have launched enclave. There's some overhead and destroy enclave, and also some attestations. But this overhead is one time, right? Maybe you don't care. So here are some measurement done by other people. This is measurement from the ISCA this year. So these guys built a very fine-grained measurement to measure how many cycles those equal and OCO will take. So here you can see here, if you do the warm cache, basically you call enclave without any parameters and you immediately return. That takes you just close to 9,000 cycles. If you say it's cold cache, it means the entire cache is flushed. It takes about like 14,000 cycles. And if you do OCO, so you can see this overhead, right? So, this is like 10,000 cycles. So to really give ideas how many cycles some other instruction takes. So here give you an example. Say for the hypercore, usually tends to have like 1,300 cycles. That is the hypercore. Then for equal and OCO tends to like 10 times more like your hypercore, right? And also here another example of the round trip system call takes about 150 cycles. This is the exception net system call called GetTSC. It was done 7 years ago. There's a paper about that. So this just gives you some ideas how much overhead this equal and OCO will take. And then memory access, right? We talk about the memory, the EPC from EPC to the cache. There's the memory encryption engine has to be involved, have to decrypt, and inside the cache and inside CPU, there's transparent, it's native. So here show you there's another this measurement is from the SCORM paper, published last year or SDI, and you can see here if your memory access is below the cache size, you can see read and write, it's native. There isn't much difference. And if you, I mean, read and write, there's not much difference, right? But if you say, hey, I go beyond my cache, then it means I have to access the memory. Then in this case, the memory encryption engine had to be involved. Then in this case, there are some overhead gets involved. And then if say, oh, I go beyond my EPC, I have to do some memory swapping. No, this is the overhead. So this just gives you some ideas about the memory access. And then what about my application, right? Here just some microscope measurement, like look at the cycles of the instructions, the memory access. And then what about applications? If say I'm going to run my application inside the enclave, how much overhead is that? So here's some measurements done by the Graphene SGX, and Chasu will talk more about this. So you can see this is from the paper, and tested. I just show you two benchmarks. One is the R, that is our data analytics platform. You can perform your data analytics with R. And this is my GCC. So in this case, you can see if you run GCC to compile a certain program, this is overhead with SGX. And maybe you care more about running some daemon program inside SGX. So here just show you if you run that HGBD, so the throughput sent to there isn't much difference, and this one is the Apache web daemon. This is the throughut. So right. So this just give you some rough ideas about. Okay, that's the SGX overhead. Perhaps if I run daemon processors, I may not feel any latency there. Oh yes. Excellent question. I think Chad's can answer. Okay, so then let's talk to applications. Let's assume SGX is perfect, secure. So how we use it, and I talked about earlier that SGX provides perfect platform for secure remote execution. There's remote, right? When you have the use case of remote, that's why I put what about in the server side. I'm a remote. I run my code in server, or server. I run my code in my clients, or there's what about like distributed scenario, right? So this that's why I categorize them into three categories. So let's first look at server side. We know server side today is cloud, right? Everything's cloud. So inside cloud, there are many workloads there, and typical applications such as data analytics, like machine learning, right? They run in the cloud. Of course, in the community, there are a lot of papers built on this. Talk about, hey, let's use the SGX to protect them. For instance, early papers talk about let's harden the application, let's harden our native code or whatever, run in the cloud. Let's make sure they are secure. So this I call them AMP hardening. Include like the very early Haven paper. So you can see the right a lot of work in this space of protect applications in the cloud. And other use case like let's do data analytics. We know we run MapReduce inside the cloud. Then can we secure MapReduce? Can we use SGX? Right. So there are a number of works in this domain, and there are some other use case of using SGX, for example, to protect some secure services or log file or some genomic computing. So there are some other use case of use SGX to do some server-side protection. So there are many papers in this space. That's why I think the community understood well in this space. I don't want to talk more about that, but I want to talk a little bit more on the client side because this is something SGX, in the first paper in the SGX, they talk about many use cases of client-side applications. So here to show you those typical, client-side applications, right? In the literature, we don't find many papers in client side how people could use SGX to protect their, their clients, the code running the client. How can we protect that? So in the first paper, from the Intel, they actually demonstrate a number of applications by using SGX to protect the client apps. And some other efforts like, hey, do some password manager or the third one is actually our startup company. They are using SGX to do the DIM. Earlier I said, of course, game publishers can leverage SGX to protect complete games. Recently there are work on doing trusted script execution in your web browser. Your web browser runs this JavaScript, then can we use SGX to protect the script? Let's zoom in a little bit to see the first, applications demonstrated by Intel. So they published this work in the HASTE workshop in 2013. So they demonstrated applications such as you can use the SGX to build one-time pad. So you can see here, this run in the client, run in your desktop or laptop, and this region is enclave. Enclave maintains your one-time pad. We know one-time pad is the cipher, right? That's the randomness is important in the one-time pad, and you definitely want to leak this one-time pad. So there, so Intel demonstrate, hey, we can build our strong one-time pad by using SGX in the client, and they also demonstrate you can do enterprise rights management. So in enterprise, there are a lot of secret documents, and then they demonstrate you can use SGX enclave to protect the confidentiality and integrity of your secrets, corporate secrets, and also demonstrate they can do video chatting, secure video chatting, like talking about you use Skype, you do the chats, right? You can run their here they demonstrate that audio and video communication they run in their enclave. So these are the early applications demonstrated by Intel. So and the third, if I cannot differentiate client servers, there's no clear distinction. We know there's the other paradigm called distributed. You have P2P, right? In this case, we cannot have a clear distinction what is server, what is client. So what about SGX is run inside this, network? And then there are works in this space. For instance, the Bitcoin, right? So in the Bitcoin, can you use the SGX to and right? So those are the papers in this space. You can use the SGX to, for instance, protect the Tor network that is P2P. So and also some smart contracts so those are the applications inside in the distributed computing scenario. Right. So what I talk about? Basically, I just give you guys a 101 on SGX. I talk about SGX is a commodity processor. It's widely available, and it's a hardware-assured trusted execution environment. And you can use that to secure your application and with minimal attack surface. And there are two ways to develop SGX to have SGX protection. One is you partition your software. The other is you don't partition. You just directly run your native. And major overhead come from the I/O and also the enclave including memory access and also the cache misses. And killer application, secure remote execution. So whenever you think about, I have a use case, it's secure, I need to secure my remote execution. In that case, can I use the SGX? Right. So those are the things I talk about. Any more questions? If no, I think Chachi can talk about. Thank you. Oh, sure. I can say yes, please. Yeah. Say again. Okay, excellent. So if say clients and application, let's say I'm computer game industry, right? I offer I distribute games, for instance. We know user purchase a computer game, they can do reverse engineering and they build the robots. They do all these attacks, right? In this threat model, I want to protect the game publisher. I want to protect my code running your machine. So of course, the whatever outside that enclave I cannot trust. Memory, all this I cannot trust. I can only trust my code in the enclave, right? Yeah, for security issues, Tetsu will talk about that. Okay, perfect. Thank you.